Here's a story about a school lockdown with a horror twist. The Last Bell. It was a typical Friday afternoon at Westbrook High, the kind where students were counting down the minutes until the weekend. The sun shone through the large windows, casting long shadows across the classrooms. Everyone was looking forward to the last bell when suddenly the intercom crackled to life. "This is Principal Harris. We are initiating a lockdown. Please follow protocol. Teachers, lock your doors and keep students calm. Do not leave the classroom under any circumstances." The tone in Principal Harris's voice was different, strained, almost fearful. Mrs. Thompson, the English teacher, quickly locked the door and drew the blinds. The students, usually rowdy at the end of the day, were silent. Whispers spread across the room. What could be happening? A loud bang echoed through the hallway, followed by hurried footsteps. Everyone's heads turned towards the door. Then another sound, a soft, distant wailing like the wind, but more unsettling. It grew louder, more distinct, until it was clear it was not the wind at all. It was crying. "The basement," one of the students whispered. "It's coming from the basement." Westbrook High had an old basement that was off limits. Rumors had always swirled around the school about the basement, stories of it being haunted, of something sinister lurking below. Most dismissed it as just ghost stories. But now, with that eerie wail growing louder, those stories didn't seem so far-fetched. Mrs. Thompson tried to keep the students calm, but the tension was thick. Suddenly the lights flickered, and the room was plunged into darkness. The intercom crackled again, but this time the voice was not Principal Harris's. It was a child's voice, faint but clear. "Come play with us," it said, followed by a giggle that sent shivers down everyone's spine. The door handle rattled, and the students gasped. Mrs. Thompson motioned for everyone to stay quiet. The handle stopped, but the sense of dread only grew. The crying from the basement was closer now, almost as if it was right outside the door. One of the students, Jake, couldn't take it anymore. "We have to get out of here," he whispered. "We can't just sit here and wait for whatever that is." Mrs. Thompson, her face pale but determined, nodded. "We'll make a run for it." Everyone stayed together. She slowly unlocked the door, and the group crept into the hallway. The school was eerily silent, except for that crying now echoing through the empty halls. They moved quickly, trying to avoid making noise. As they reached the main entrance, they found the doors chained shut from the outside. A soft thud behind them made everyone freeze. They turned slowly, and there, at the end of the hallway, stood a figure. It was a girl no older than 10, wearing an old-fashioned school uniform. Her hair hung in front of her face, wet and matted, and her skin was deathly pale. Who are you?" Mrs. Thompson managed to ask, her voice trembling. The girl lifted her head slightly, just enough for them to see her eyes, hollow and black. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice echoing unnaturally. "They don't like it when people try to leave." Behind her, shadows began to move, taking shape, dark, twisted figures emerging from the walls, their eyes glowing red. The wailing grew louder, deafening. As the shadows advanced, panic set in, and the students scattered. Jake tried to pull the chains off the door, but they wouldn't budge. The shadows were closing in, and the girl was gone, leaving only her eerie voice behind. "Play with us. Forever." Suddenly, the fire alarm went off, and the sprinklers activated, spraying water everywhere. The shadows hissed and recoiled, retreating into the darkness. The door chains clattered to the floor, as if released by some unseen force. Without hesitation, they bolted outside, the fresh air hitting them like a jolt. They didn't stop running until they were far from the school. When they finally turned back, Westbrook High stood silent and dark, as if nothing had happened. The police arrived shortly after, finding the school empty and undisturbed. The principal and teachers were found safe, locked in their offices with no memory of what had occurred. But the students who experienced the lockdown knew the truth. They never spoke of it again, but they never forgot the girl in the basement or the shadows that tried to claim them. And every Friday afternoon, when the last bell rang, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching them, waiting for another chance to play.